Hello and welcome to another episode of The Lion's Den. My name's Toby Bennett and today I am here to talk about the first time that I played at the international level with my beloved Dark Angels. So I am going to go through the 5-round teams event where I represented Team Wales 1. Where I was playing Dark Angels. You can see my list on screen right now, and kind of give a bit of a tournament report, blow-by-blow account of how everything went, where I think Dark Angels are in the meta and sort of what that means for us going forward, maybe things that I would do differently, things that I would keep the same or do more of, those kinds of things. So obviously this is on WTC terrain because this is on the road to WTC 2026, where I'm trying out for Team Wales. So fingers crossed there that I make the final 8. But this was my first opportunity to kind of show what I was made of. And luckily I was able to jump on the Dark Angels. So I was able to put my best foot forward and see how I could do at that level. So first and foremost, our team was made up of Orcs, World Eaters, Dark Angels, Eldari, Imperial Knights, and Astra Militarum. It was 6-person. So that was a completely new experience for me as well. I've never had the champion card at the end. So that was a completely new experience during the pairings process, which did make it very interesting and different. And I think particularly in round 4, our opponents really took advantage of that champion card and really leveraged that very well. So I was playing with the Welsh captain, Josh, who was on the Eldari. And we had some other sort of quite well-known names on our team, like Lovely Scrivo from 6++, and Tom Green from Mind Goblins, who's a very good friend of mine. And it was a really lovely experience. All of the guys, Ash, Alex, myself, and the other 3 that I just mentioned had, it was a really nice experience, really good fun, and we gelled very well as a 6. I felt so. That's always, I think, the first and most important thing. So in terms of preparation for the event, we had what maps that we could look at, and there were quite a few maps that I felt there was good staging for Deathwing Knights. There was, because we were missing. I can't remember exactly which ones it was. 2 of the maps obviously weren't in play because there weren't 8 players. But the maps that were left still had the sort of typical Dark Angels maps, which was quite important. From there, I played Gladius because I thought 15 Deathwing Knights and the Lion. It presents a stat check. It presents a headache in pairing. It's all of these different things that I think just causes issues for our opponent's thought process. And that's what we were targeting. We're trying to make our opponents struggle during that pairings process. If you can try and win that pairings process, then that's half the battle already, because then all you need to do is sort of get on Matrix, happy days, no one needs to do anything crazy, all good. So, as I mentioned, I was using the Lion because Fights First Demon Primarch of Death is awesome. He's not an actual demon, obviously. Well, maybe he is. We never know with the lore these days. Maybe he's in fact a woman. I don't judge the Lion. He can do whatever he wants. But jokes aside, the Lion is such a force multiplier now because of the reroll auras, and that uppy-downy ability just really allows him to get a lot more freedom and be where he needs to be. I only used it once all weekend, but it was very impactful when I did use it. So Lion was there kind of for the combat matchups particularly, followed swiftly by those 15 Deathwing Knights. Again, just that hardcore stat check. Can you chew through this many wounds while I'm hitting you with this reasonable damage output backed up by the Lion? Then had our classic of Azrael and Assault Intercessors to go and play that expansion objective. A little Gladius special with the Captain in Gravis Armor with Artificer Armor enhancement to turn him into a mini Catan, which is really very useful. 2 up, 4 up, 5 up with halves damage. He just punches way above his weight, able to skirmish really efficiently, picks up 5-man Marine units for fun. He's just a really solid little guy. I had him with the Power Sword alongside his Power Fist. The Relic Blade, I think it's actually called, instead of the Relic Chainsword, just because I thought that the Strength 5 was more important than the extra attack. Is that correct? But I quite liked it. Then I had my own little bit of spice, and that was a Phobos Lieutenant rather than the classic Combi Lieutenant. So obviously classic Combi Lieutenant is extremely good, and it's far better than the Phobos Lieutenant. But what I really wanted to do is have a unit that was exclusively given over to scoring those secondaries and sort of being a pain in that regard. And what the Phobos Lieutenant does, he infiltrates, he scouts, he moves, shoot moves, and he's got deep strike. So it gives me a lot of flexibility in those early phases of the game. Like, do I start him in reserve so I can just drop him down and just score points with him? In practice, I was just throwing him away because, you know, I just wanted to get things like established locus in their deployment zone or behind enemy lines, etc., etc. But also there's scope sometimes if your opponent stickies their objective and they're not expecting it, you can drop in with the Phobos Lieutenant, shoot something, move, shoot, move, and steal that objective. So there's a lot of positives for the Phobos Lieutenant. I was very impressed with him all weekend. Can you just straight switch him for a Combi Lieutenant? I don't think so. I think this is specifically a Dark Angels thing because we need that access to that wound reroll that usually he gives on an objective, but obviously we've got the Lion to do that job instead. Obviously having 2 is nice, but you know, that 55 point, that I had 55 points spare. That's that's the long short of it. I didn't want to spend that 15 points to upgrade, well, to downgrade the Inceptors or something like that into something else. So that was really why I did it. But I was very, very impressed with the Phobos Lieutenant all weekend. Next, had some Intercessors, just a sticky home, anti-chaff, just a really solid little screening unit. Intercessors are probably one of my favourite units at the moment just because of that utility. As mentioned, 3x5 Deathwing Knights. All of the Knight Masters have the Relic Weapon because they are Strength 7, and I find that's a really critical breakpoint. And I like lethal hits as well, really quite handy, especially with the re-rolling of hits. And then we had maces on all of them. Now, I know some people go for the swords because they've got access to lance, and I think that's more than fair. However, in this case, I felt that it was more pertinent to take those maces and to save that CP particularly for fight on death, because I was more concerned that I would end up going into World Eaters or other nasty combat armies like maybe EC and having that 2 CP up to fight on death rather than like focusing on killing them was just a little bit more useful rather than like, let's just lock them in combat. I'm usually just killing most things that I'm going into anyway, and with a bit of sensible positioning, I don't need that little bit of extra damage output. I get enough out of the Knights anyway. So then we had 2 Land Speed of Vengeances, another bit of tech from the Data Slate alongside the Lion. Just a really good little unit. It goes 14. Obviously, it's got access to advance and shoot. It's got a really nasty gun that's very consistent into those anti-elite pieces, but then does also punch up. I've waxed lyrical about this unit a lot. I continue to be impressed with it. I really love what it can do just because of that maneuverability. And I think it is surprisingly survivable as well with that 5-up invuln, which is really quite critical, but also that access to like just putting at the back of your opponent's head. I don't think it came up once this weekend, but putting at the back of your opponent's head, you know, if you shoot that and kill it, I get to shoot you back. You know, those kinds of things are really quite critical. At first I had 3 Land Speed of Vengeances, but then I was like, okay, what if I switch one of them out for a Bolter Inceptor? Because then that gives me a 6-inch deep striking piece that can really focus towards scoring. Now, in terms of pure damage output, is it better than a Land Speed of Vengeance? No. However, specifically in Gladius, because it's got access to that strip cover extra AP, it's twin linked, it can 6-inch deep strike, and it can really critically kill those opposing units, like particularly marine bodies, very, very efficiently. It's something that I was keen to have. And surprisingly, they're reasonably survivable too, because of that T6 and 3 wounds a pop. So overall, I was really quite impressed with the Inceptors. They were dropping in and usually getting me points by killing something that looked hidden, be that a marked for death or similar. And they just really bought me time and bought me kills, which I thought was really very important, really very useful as well. So I was impressed with the Bolter Inceptors. Next, we've got some Scouts and some JPIs. Just classic Dark Angels and Marine units because they're just good skirmishers. Scouts are great. JPIs are great. So, it's just those critical units that do the job for you and really kind of make life easier and simpler. So I was really impressed with them. I thought that again they just did their job, which is really quite critical in the list that is quite light on units, because you're spending a lot of points on the Lion and 15 Deathwing Knights. So those scouts, JPIs, Phobos Lieutenant, Captain and Gravis Armor, they really have to put in a big shift to ensure that you're not just falling behind on points. And overall, I was actually quite impressed in terms of how the list scored its secondaries, because most of the time, with the exception of some poor card draws, I was able to score quite well on my secondaries. So round one, obviously you get a little bit more time to prepare. We were up against Team Scotland Nessie, which was another very good friend of mine who was captaining that one. So it was really, really good fun to get to go against Struan and his lovely, lovely team. I ended up pairing into their Chaos Space Marine player, Sean. We were on supply drop. We were doing supply drop on Tipping Point. And this was a really interesting one. It was triple, so Renegade Raiders, triple Predator, and then kind of your classic pieces of, like 10 Possessed, some Chosen, Cypher, who obviously had to die, all those kinds of pieces. And that was particularly interesting. And obviously on supply drop, you want to go second because it's almost certainly 15 points. And of course I went first. So that was already a bit of a, oh God, okay, this isn't going quite right. But what I did was I immediately picked up the Lion and went, okay, I can see those Possessed are positioned to push forward really nice and quickly. If I allow them to just push forward, and I think there was some Noise Marines in this as well, sorry. If I just allow them to push forward with them, and then rapid ingress the Lion and threaten that heroic intervention, either way, I'm going to score that primary, or I'm going to kill myself some Possessed. And that is a very, very good trade, because I'm killing Possessed and I'm losing some number of scouts. So that trade is very much one that I was hunting. And that's what happened. So Sean charged into my scouts. I heroicked with the Lion. Lion got to fight first and picked up 8 of them, I think. It was 7 or 8 of them. I think it was 7, actually, yeah. Picks up 7 of them with his strike. Because Sean rolled slightly under average on his 5-up invuns. At which point I lost 3 scouts. And I did lose the objective because I couldn't get the Lion onto the objective. But critically, I was then in a position where one of his key damage dealers was just neutered immediately. And I was like, okay, well, this is a really good start. Now I can start securing this objective, which is what I did. Got the JPIs up, got the Lion in position, started just gently kind of pushing the Deathwing Knights forward, looking at his expansion, getting some Deathwing Knights into position there so they could start threatening, and I could just kind of take a bit of the pressure away from the Lion's flank, because that was my expansion. And what Sean did was he threw his Noise Marines forward, threw his Lord forward into the Lion, and looked to try and focus down my land speed of Vengeances, my Inceptors, and some Deathwing Knights. Now, the Deathwing Knights really did hold very efficiently. Even though I couldn't make a single save on them, they just were tanking a lot of damage, which was very, very impressive. There was a lot of sustained hits going on, which was quite stressful coming out of those Predators. I think at one point there was 5 6s out of 6 shots on the Preds, which was, it's one of those where you just go, yeah, that's kind of funny. So that was tough for those Deathwing Knights to sort of stand there and take that punishment. And I did lose a lot of resources, but I was able to kind of keep a few units alive. There was a good rapid ingress, and also the Lion was put down to 2 wounds by the Blastmasters out of the Noise Marines, which was kind of just some poor rolling on my part. So it went down to 8 from the clapback from the Possessed, and then went down and then dropped 2 of the wounds off of the Blastmaster Noise Marines. But then the Lord charged him, and he was able to just sweep and pick them all up. So, it was a calculated risk that relied on spiking 4-up invuns, I think, from Sean. But that was, in my opinion, a bit of a mistake. But if that Lord had survived, he would have definitely killed the Lion. What I did from there, because those Noise Marines were still very much there and threatening that flank, was I just picked the line up, because at that point he's just going to get overwatched, he's going to get killed. So I just picked him up with his ability and dropped him on the other flank, so that he could support that flank with their rerolls. He doesn't need to bang those charges, he doesn't need to push, he can just lone up himself, sit in that corner, give those rerolls, and then come out a little bit later and be that threatening force once those predators are either tied up elsewhere or are having problems elsewhere. And there was I think the sort of the key moment for me was when I rapid ingressed some Deathwing Knights into the dead center of the board with no other shots into them, and they were able to really just like push hard and straight towards Sean's deployment zone. And at that point, I'm catching Preds, I'm killing Preds. The key units that we're trying to trade, etc., they're going down fast. And some Deathwing Knights, just like I was dropping, honestly, I was picking up 5 dice and failing all the 4-up impuns. However, because they're just so tanky, they were still managing to survive even through my poor rolling. And eventually it was just, I ground him down. The Lion did go down in the end, but luckily the Deathwing Knights kind of one of them on another flank just didn't really get hurt, so they kind of got to run rampant into Sean's back line. And Azrael was pretty damn survivable as well, which then allowed me to do that final shove and keep Sean from being able to take the centre supply drop objective, which allowed me to win it 16-4. So really, really good game. We won that round. I think it was quite a strong win as well. So that gave us that confidence going into round 2. But then we went up against England Crusaders, who in my opinion were arguably the best team in the room. When you're in a room of that quality, that is a hell of a thing to say, because you had players like Innes on Team Selkies for Scotland. Obviously, it was Team England Roses that ended up winning the event. So there was some real high quality teams there. But I think when we went into it, Crusaders were my pick to win, because it was made up of Greg Chamberlain, who I ended up playing, Michael Duff, Mark Crumbleholm, Chris Kinnear, who was captaining, Matt Bell, and unfortunately the 6th player has slipped my mind. I think his name was Michael. But a lot of those names, if you watch competitive scenes, you will recognise. There's 2 very strong players out of Dead Red Gaming. Matt is a very strong War Masters player that's 20-0'd me quite handily before, and also lovely dude, but did hand me an absolute pasting at a tournament. They were an incredible team of lots of people with experience of going to the WTC. They really brought that pedigree to the tournament. And Greg is someone that I played in my first ever 2-day tournament. Back when he was playing Eldari, and Eldari were really horrible at the start of 10th. And we had a really great, we played twice before. Both times had been fantastic, but they were right at the start of when I started playing. And Greg was one of those people that actually gave me the confidence to kind of keep pushing on and push into that competitive mindset and push into playing more super majors, etc. Because he said right at the start, I feel like he's going to be someone that can go places. And that gave me that confidence to kind of push on, that a player of that pedigree was saying that. So getting to go against Greg was a real pleasure. I cannot lie, getting one over on him was even more of a pleasure, because he is someone that I've always wanted to beat. I've lost to him twice, right when I started, and I was like, okay, this is my time. And apparently the dice decided that it very much was my time. So we were playing Hidden Supplies on Hammer and Anvil. Greg was playing Shadow Legion Demons, which was really interesting. It had the Uppy Downy Bloodthirster, it had the Scouting AC/DC brick, it had Bellacore, then it had loads of Screamers, some Raptors, lots of other just like some Pink Horrors, just solid blunting units that could be just a pain in the arse for your opponent to deal with. And we both put on our matrix that it was a very swingy matchup, and it was the score was not reflective of how it should have gone. So Greg went first. Great for me in hidden supplies. Means that I'm almost guaranteed to get 15 at the end. So I'm like, okay, I don't have to play too aggressive. He's going to have to play aggressive. So I just need to be alive at the end, which is great. I lost my unit of JPIs on turn 1 to the scouting AC/DC brick. But then up stepped the lion and did a very good job of stabbing that AC/DC brick to death, which was rather impressive, I think, on his part. And I love AC/DC. I think they're brilliant, but the lion can really chop through them at a good pace. So from there, I felt like I was quite behind on primary because the AC/DC brick had kind of locked me in my deployment zone, so I needed to kind of push a little bit, be a little bit more aggressive, get a little bit cheeky, just to kind of try and get myself into a position where we were actually battling over the middle, because Greg had a very, very secure base in the middle with Be'lakor just sort of like comfortably scoring him points and getting to shoot quite happily. So I had to play a little bit aggressively and take some risks. My turn 1 risks didn't pay off a huge amount. The land speeder ended up kind of whiffing into some screamers, which was a little bit of a shame because they were oathed as well, but sometimes you just can't control it. But most importantly, I did pick up that AC/DC brick, which then freed me up to kind of keep pushing, keep thrusting forward as hard as I could. And as much as Greg scored 10 points on primary, I was able to make sure that he didn't score hold more, which was really critical for that early turn, because I can't let him cancel out my 15 at the end of the game with a turn 2 15. So essentially, what I then did was I pushed up, but tried not to be too aggressive. I wanted him to be the one that had to kind of make that first commitment, and I wanted that commitment to be into Deathwing Knights and the Lion. From there, I think it was turn 3 that was the really critical point, where I dropped some Inceptors and they picked up a unit of Screamers. With those Screamers sort of being gone for a mark for death, that was very useful. But it was more important what happened in Greg's turn, because he whiffed a 4-inch charge, rolling a double 1, re-rolled it, rolled a 3, for a Skull Throne to go into some Deathwing Knights. That allowed the Deathwing Knights to survive, and instead of then the Deathwing Knights just charging straight back into that Skull Throne, they shot around and went for Be'lakor. And I'd needed to use the Lion to deal with some Bloodletters that had killed off a unit of Deathwing Knights, because Skull Throne and Bloodletters is crazy, crazy good with the amount that you can get. So they had torn through these Deathwing Knights, which was rough. So I had to have the Lion go over there and deal with that, especially with some speeders, because there was about 20 Bloodletters all in that corner. So I charged the single Deathwing Knight that was left from one squad. I had 6 Deathwing Knights at this point. Single one from one squad and 5 from the others into Be'lakor. And I went, I think, for another unit of Bloodletters. So the Lion obviously went for 1 unit of Bloodletters. On the other flank, Azrael went for another unit of Bloodletters. And I just went, okay, I'm going to have to stomach that I'm going to get interrupted here. I cannot have this on the Lion. Because he is the one that is more likely to die. Like, on average, I don't lose a Deathwing Knight to one of Be'lakor's hits, so that's kind of okay. So I had to just stomach it and hope that I rolled 4 ups. So Lion does his thing, slaughters through the Bloodletters. There was, I think, 2 left out of 20 by the end of it, with the support of those speeders. And then at which point I get interrupted. I lose 2 Deathwing Knights, so the Knight Master and another guy. And then the Deathwing Knights swung. And my God, did they high roll. Be'lakor was on full wounds, and he died. He just got one shot by 3 Deathwing Knights in one squad and 1 Deathwing Knight in the other. And rather poetically, it was the single Deathwing Knight on his own that did the last 4 damage. And honestly, you couldn't make this shit up. Greg just could not roll a 4-up save to save his life. Quite literally, because that's why Be'lakor died, and that was literally just the game there and then. And it was absolutely luck that caused that to happen. I think that's maybe like a 10% chance of happening, but it happened. And that was a big swing in terms of the score, because suddenly Be'lakor's no longer there. It is just that Bloodthirster as the last critical unit. And it was the unit that Greg failed a charge into as well, the Deathwing Knights that Greg failed that 4-inch charge into, that were even luckier to be able to then slingshot round and go for Be'lakor, while as Azrael was able to go in, deal with the Skull Throne or whatever it's called, and sort of just stab it to death, which they did also promptly do, which left, I think, literally just like some cultists and some demons, and the Bloodthirster left. So Bloodthirster comes in and clears up Azrael, just deals with everything, I think, apart from Azrael. I think then Azrael might have died to the mortal wounds afterwards. Yeah, I think he did. But then he was in the middle, and I just went, okay, everything in. And the Lion just went, you're dead. So that one ended at a 15-5. On Matrix, it definitely shouldn't have. I matrixed this one at a 9 or a 10. To get a 15 was incredibly lucky, so do not take that as like we're just amazing into demons, because that is not the case. Like, this is a very, very swingy matchup where like 4-ups really impact, because the demon damage output is extremely high. Our damage output is good into demons. But whoever spikes those 4-ups, or whoever doesn't spike those 4-ups in this case, is the one that is going to lose. So I managed to win mine 15-5. Unfortunately, we lost that round by 1 point. So we missed out on a draw by 1 point, which was rough. But I think, again, we kind of got in pairings. But that's no surprise, because obviously, like, England are England. They have the most experience for a reason. They had players that have comfortably sort of been at WTCs for a while. And they're a very impressive outfit. They know their stuff. So, it's no bad thing to kind of lose in pairings, quote unquote. And it was still a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. I thought going into that team, we were kind of like up the creek without a paddle. But actually, it finished a lot better than I thought. So round 3, we went into another Team Scotland. Unfortunately, I can't remember which mythical creature this particular Team Scotland was. They had Nessie, they had Selkies, and they had this team, and I can't remember what it was, and I'm locked out of BCP to go and check what it was, so apologies, guys. I had Dave on his World Eaters, another player that's been to the WTC, and playing the Premier Army, with the 50 Zerkers, so 2 bricks of 20 with the Juggerlord, and then Khan, obviously, alongside the Berserker Blade, or whatever the dude's called, for the Exalted Slaughterbound, or whatever they're, the guys that are very, very good at killing vehicles. Luckily, I had sod all vehicles in my list. But it was a very solid list. And I went second, which was excellent. However, it allowed Dave to kind of dictate the pace of the game with his spawn. And if you're going against World Eaters, kill the spawn as soon as possible. It doesn't matter what you do, you get rid of those spawn, and that army is in so much trouble. Well, not so much trouble, but it's in such a poorer position when it doesn't have spawn to when it does have spawn. So go in and deal with them quickly. I used the Lion to deal with spawn because they are that annoying. And then I was hoping that the Lion would then make, he'd CP him to put him into advance and charge, go for a charge into 20 brick. Dave doesn't have the -1 damage stratagem up. So I'm like, okay, I can sweep. I can pick up like 11 of these guys. They've not charged. They're wounding me on 5s. There's lots of really critical things that are massively beneficial to me here. Unfortunately, the Lion failed his charge. Well, he didn't actually end up charging because I rolled a 3 on advance, and I was like, okay, I've got an 8-inch charge. I'm going to re-roll the dice. And I think in hindsight, I actually should have just gone for the charge and re-rolled the charge. But I rolled a 1 on the advance from the 3. So, that was not ideal. The Lion sort of stood there in the open, waiting to get charged. Which he did, and he took down 11 Berserkers, and then was promptly killed. So, not ideal. Made me quite sad, and I was at that point, I was like, okay, this isn't looking amazing. What do I do next? But luckily, the Gravis captain, some JPIs, and a squad of Deathwing Knights were able to finish off that 20 brick. And then I was able to kind of flood the flanks and also drop a unit of Deathwing Knights right behind Dave. He'd left a little gap, sort of literally right behind where that 20 brick had been, because it's quite light on units, so screening for them is quite difficult. And I was able to go nick his home objective. And Deathwing Knights on your home objective it's an unhealthy place to be. And at that point, I had the potential of pincering him between Deathwing Knights with his second 20 brick. And that's what I was really trying to do. I was trying to distract those Zerkers and like kind of pull them back and get them to charge the 20 brick. Charge the Deathwing Knights that were back in his base. But he didn't buy that. Decided that was not what he wanted to do, and he was going to go after the mid board and just sort of deny me with a Rhino on his home objective, which makes sense. But this critical turn, I lose one squad of Deathwing Knights to Khan, and I lost 3 Deathwing Knights to the 20 brick because he didn't quite spike on the devastating wounds into infantry with that 20 brick. There was a lot of wounds, but that was not the unit that had the extra AP. So I was able to save, saving on 2s and saving on 3s into the Eviscerators with Armour of Contempt. And that was what kept them alive. And at which point, those 2 Deathwing Knights turned around and killed 9 Zerkers back. And at that point, I'm going, okay, what I want to do now, because what I had planned was to lose both units of Deathwing Knights, charge everything into Khan and friends and deal with them with the Catan captain, some JPIs, all that kind of stuff, and do that way. And then I was going to charge, I was going to just like stand 9.1 inches away so that he couldn't blood surge into me and just shoot with everything. Shoot with 2 speeders, some inceptors, all that kind of stuff. Because of the positioning where he was, I could get those lanes and really start bullying. I think Azrael would have been involved as well. But I couldn't do that because 2 Deathwing Knights survived. So he would just blood surge into the Deathwing Knights because they can't get away. So what I had to do was push up with Azrael, go for the charge with Azrael. I did get to shoot with, I think it was one of the speeders, and like say, okay, if you want to blood surge, you make Azrael's charge shorter, and I'm fine with that. So Dave didn't take that bait. The Inceptors had to drop behind, and they absolutely spiked into some Exalted 8-bound and picked up 2 of them, which then allowed me to I don't know why I thought this was a good idea, but I charged the last Exalted 8-bound with the speeder. Don't do that, like it's dumb, but it worked because he couldn't hit me at all for some reason. That Exalted 8-pound, I think he was just like so shocked that his mates were dead, really struggled. And then I was able to kind of deal with the Rhino on his home objective to get rid of that. The Slaughterbound was kind of looking at the objective that the Lion had died on, which had just like JPIs and Catan Captain left. So I'm trying to sort of keep him as far away as possible with the JPIs, but then unfortunately they low roll on their charge, didn't kill everything, left a couple of special weapons alive in Khan, so they got picked up, and then the Catan Captain got picked up in the next turn from the charging, what are they called, Exalted 8-bound. But that was fine because I picked up that second 20 brick, and suddenly I'm controlling the middle, my home, the expansion that Azrael was on, and his home. I was like, okay, now we just sit, we focus, and we jump ahead, because I was so far behind on points at one point. I think it was like 42-10 at the end of his second turn, him having gone first, because my secondary cards had just been really rough. So that wasn't good, but I was then able to sort of use that later game scoring to pull it back and get a 14-6. And I think we ended up drawing that round. I think it was a dead-on 60-60. But it was a damn good day, damn good game, and Dave was an incredible opponent, really nice guy, the exact kind of opponent that you want for a round 3, because that's when you're starting to get fatigued. You know, these games are intense and they're difficult. But it was that attitude of play by intent, as everyone should be doing at the WTC. But Dave really embodied that. Greg did also embody that, but Dave did also embody that. And there was mistakes that we both made that we were able to catch, and it was that kind of supportive. Oh, you've missed that. Don't worry, we can sort out that way. So massive kudos to Dave on that, and real pleasure to get to play him. I had so much fun. And if you ever go against Dave, you're in for a damn hard game, but you'll have a great time doing it. Next, we got Naz's team in Team England Lions. So that was an exciting one because Naz is there, which is obviously you kind of look at that and go, well, he's probably going to 20 someone with that Raven Guard list because they're kind of cracked. And it's Naz. So it was nice in the morning, though. I walked in, got a massive hug off him, and then suddenly he gives me a kiss on the cheek as well, which kind of shows how serious we all take it at that top level, and everyone that really is good friends, which is really bloody lovely. And I've got a lot of time for Naz. He's one of the funniest guys I know. But it was a great team, really solid team. There's Adam Parmenter as well, who is someone I've played a couple of times before. Really lovely guy. That team in general was just a really lovely team. There was Ed Watts as well. You should go and follow his channel. If you're not following his channel, he's doing conversion and painting guides. I'll try and remember to put a link down below, but if I don't, just drop a comment or message me, something like that. But I was up against Brett with his Daemons, and it was triple ACDC. So I went from playing no Shadow Legion since it came out to double Shadow Legion, both out of Team England. So it was triple ACDC, one with the uppy downy, one with the Scout 9 enhancement, and one with the -1 to your OC enhancement. We're playing Terraform on Crucible, and there was I think 40 pink horrors. It was blunter to the extreme. And I think that so Lions were very happy to get me off the board early. I think I was the first pairing they selected, because we thought that they would pick our orcs into the Demons. Didn't go that way, because they spotted that they could take Dark Angels, which really helped their Matrix apparently. So that's what they grabbed. So I wasn't really expecting to go into Demons, but there we were. The Demons didn't really have anything that did damage. They didn't have a Bellacore or a Skullthrone or all the Bloodletters that Greg's list had. It had lots of ACDC, but ACDC are not very good into Dark Angels, especially if they don't get that extra AP, because all I do is I stick an AOC on the unit that they go into, and I'm saving on 2s the whole time. So the Lion I went second again. Some bloody nurglings went in and just screamed me all over the shop, which was very annoying. I was able to pick up 6 screamers, which was quite nice, with some JPIs. And I was like, well, not just the JPIs, there was some support from some vengeances as well. And I was able to get my Catan captain, because I went turn 1 advance and charge, because he just went so aggressive on the turn 1 that I was like, I'm not going to need it after this turn. So I'm just going to go for it. So I went for it, and I got the Catan captain into some Seekers, which was really critical. I got 10 Deathry Knights into Nurglings. Only one of them got to activate and didn't kill the whole squad, which was very funny because it meant I scored nothing on turn 1 as well, because I had Marked for Death and something else. Oh, Area Denial when there was an ACDC brick and the Nurglings in the middle. So Lion has an 8-inch charge because he did have a 6, but then the -2 charge, which is really tasty. Rolled a 6 on the charge. I was like, oh, if only it hadn't been the -2, I'll CP that. Bang a 12. And I was like, okay, well, cool. This is good. Lion does a damn good job of chopping stuff to pieces, kills all of the supporting chaff, which was really quite critical. And then AOCs, tanks all of the mutants back. I think he took 2 damage. And it was like, okay, so I'm not going to hold this objective, but I'm going to force him to spend a CP on keeping it, which is going to reduce the amount of CP that he's got to start minusing my charges the next turn. And I'm going to be able to chew through enough stuff to cause problems. So he falls back from the lion. We sort of skirmish on the other objectives, but my expansion objective at that point was weirdly kind of secure. Because I think he was hoping to like pick up his ACDC brick and block and drop them over the other side, but was able to block that with Inceptors a little bit later in the game. So the lion gets charged by the second unit of ACDC. Again, picks up all of the chaff guys and just sort of goes, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. AOCs, gets dropped to 5 wounds and then just goes, are you not entertained? At which point I was then able to pick up 2 ACDC bricks. I was like, cool. Now I need to play for points because my secondaries have been crap so far. And I just need to go and get points because now I can turn it and now I can pressure. But my God, was this list survivable? There was so many pink horrors. The Inceptors did bang again an 8-inch charge. Rerolled it, got an 11. So there was a couple of quite lucky charges in there. But the Inceptors were able to deal with some Plague Bearers, which really, really helped me. And the Lion was just an MVP all game. He just chopped through things like there was no tomorrow. I was super aggressive with him because I was like, can you actually kill the Lion? I don't think so. So I just sort of really went for it with the Lion. And yeah, Brett was right when he said, I just don't think I can kill enough of your army. And I don't think I lost any Deathwing Knights. I think I lost a unit of Scouts and a unit of JPIs. I think that was it. Oh, and I lost the unit of Inceptors, and that was literally it. So, really impressive, and another good use of the Phobos Lieutenant, because he was just kind of dropping down and screening for me as well, and like blocking those little gaps that I was leaving on these maps. So it was really very helpful there. So that would end up a 14-6. We won 4 of the 6 games, but unfortunately the 2 losses that we took, which is what I meant when we didn't lose, but the pairings really went against us. And we ended up drawing because Naz and Ed got 220. I think it was a 20 and an 18 actually, which was a bit of a shame. But we still managed to be on the winning side of that draw. So going into someone as experienced as Naz with such a good team as well, I was really pleased with that. There was no easy matchups this weekend. It was a hell of a tournament. So we were 1 win, 1 loss, 2 draws at this point, and we get one of the other Welsh teams. And promptly some of the guys decided that they wanted to go home. So we just quickly matrixed it. And I got World Eaters again, which I was absolutely thrilled about. But unfortunately, didn't get to play them because people went home. So we took the Matrix, which was a 14-6 because of obviously what happened with Dave. Again, it was on Search and Destroy. Which I think is arguably even better for Dark Angels because we can kind of use the Lion as that bait piece, which then sets up for the Deathwing Knights to go in. And because we're using the Lion as that bait piece, it's forcing them to spend that CP. And I've seen more World Eaters are cutting the Demon Prince. And that really plays into my hands because I'm like, well, you are not doing -1 damage then, my friend, because you do not have the CP to keep ticking over. You can't not extra AP yourself. Because otherwise I will just save all of this and then clap you back so hard that you cry. And then I'll just fall back and charge you anyway, and it won't matter that you've got -1 damage. So that was really critical. So we matrixed that in as a 14-6, which I think would have been sort of very fair. Again, no Demon Prince, which was really very critical for me. And I very much liked that Search and Destroy map. I saw the map and I was like, I really wish I got to play this one. However, it did mean that I got to go undefeated for the weekend, and I was absolutely thrilled. It went better than I could have hoped for, especially getting the win over 2 England teams. As you can tell, I don't have a particularly strong Welsh accent. Shocker, it's because I'm not personally Welsh. It's me gran that is. So it was one of those where it was nice to get the win over the English guys. It was nice to get the win over the Scotland guys, and like kind of feel that I deserved to like actually have a place amongst those players. Because I spoke to Greg about this very briefly, but there's always this thing with like imposter syndrome where you get lots, like last year I got so many plaudits and there were so many people being really, really lovely, but I didn't feel like I deserved them because like, yeah, I did well in a couple of tournaments, but like, I'm not Liam VSL or, I'm not Greg, I'm not these guys. But then actually being able to shake it up and sort of hold my own, that that sort of really put that fire in my belly that actually, like, no, I need to keep pushing this and keep going for it. The only slight downside is that now that they want to see variety from me, so I can't play Dark Angels for a bit. I'm very sad. But I do have a tournament coming up, not this week, but the week after, which is another teams tournament on WTC where I will be playing the same list again. And I cannot wait because it is such a fun list. I literally would not change it. It is just fun and awesome. And I would thoroughly recommend it to anyone playing on WTC because my God, is it entertaining. So yeah, that was the Battle of Britain. I didn't get food poisoning, so that's a win. Because I was taken care of at the wonderful Australasia in dead centre of Manchester with my partner as well. So it was really lovely just to get to have a really nice little date night for myself and my girlfriend in dead centre of Manchester. Although Manchester on a Saturday night is an experience. And the food there was absolutely incredible. So highly recommend that one. If you do get the chance to go there. And then I just want to thank our sponsors, Glasshammer Gaming, Terrain Forge, Gambit Gaming, and Trident FutureWorks. They're all fantastic. You'll see the discount codes that we have in the description below. But most importantly, Dark Angels are back, baby. And remember, stay loyal, fuckers. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.